So thank you, Katharina. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Also from my side, a warm welcome to you to the next session on TVET data reporting. Thank you to all of you here in the room and to those joining us online. We are delighted to have you with us. My name is Gesa Münchhausen, and I'm from the Federal Institute for Vocational Education and Training, in Germany. And I recently moved to the international department, and I have the pleasure of moderating this session. And I'd like to start with a brief introduction on this challenging topic. So why data in technical, vocational education and training matter? We have data, we have lots of data on the TVET situation. Data and indicators on that are crucial because they create transparency and provide us with a solid basis for policy and decision making. So they help us understand, for example, how well vocational systems perform, who has access to training and who is left out, which skills are needed in the labor market, and where action is required to improve quality, inclusion, or digital transformation. In short, without reliable data, vocational education and training remains a kind of mystery box. With them, we can compare, access, and improve the system more effectively. And that is the reason for this focus area, global data reporting. That is the reason why it was installed in the global TVET agenda. So, and today I'm very pleased to introduce Iván Bornacelly, Policy Analyst at the OECD Center for Skills and project leads for the TVET Global Data Report. Iván specializes in data analysis for evidence-based policymaking and brings valuable experience from his previous work at the Inter-American Development Bank and the World Bank. And he is giving us today an overview about the report scope, methodology, and vision. Following his presentation, we'll open a panel discussion. So, Iván, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Thank you, Gesa, for the kind introduction. So let's start right away in the matter. We know that technical vocational education and training is essential to equip people with the skills they need to work, to adapt, and to continue learning throughout their life. Yet, globally, TVET doesn't always receive the attention and the importance that it deserves. One key reason is the lack of data on TVET, and also how the information has been it's fragmented so far through the collected different way of collecting the data across country, but also with the limited comparability that the data is being brought so far. This makes it very difficult for policymakers to assess performance, to share lessons, and identify what really works. To strengthen the global understanding and visibility of TVET, the OECD, under the Excellence in TVET initiative, is leading the development of the Global TVET Data Report, which is a flagship that aims to harmonize and map the data that is available across countries and regions. The initiative has four main objectives. The first one is to identify what TVET data already exists, their main sources, and where efforts have been made to ensure the comparability of the information and data. This work will also highlight the key gaps and inconsistencies that limit that international analysis and that comparability effort. The second objective is to design and pilot a common framework that help us to to conduct systematic comparison on TVET data across countries and regions. The third is to integrate all these findings into a general overview and comprehensive global overview of the TVET system, providing a way to have evidence base for international dialogue and cooperation. And finally, the project aims to support countries in improving the quality and comparability of their data system. The project is structured in 3 interrelated phases. We begin by systematically mapping the existing data, and here we aim to identify who collects what, through which sources, and what level of coverage and quality is available, the data is available. This will help us to have a better understanding on what is the global data landscape. Next, we would like to dig deeper to understand why TVET data remain inconsistent. We want to explore definitional differences, the different fragmented reporting mechanism, and the institutional or resource limitation that affect the data availability and the data quality. And finally, we aim to move from the diagnosis to action, proposing a core set of harmonized indicators, highlighting good practices, and offering practical strategy to improve the TVET data system at the global level. Let's focus on the mapping of existing source information and data. This phase is guided by a set of core design principles that I have summarized. There are several principles, but I have summarized it in 3 big areas. The one is framework and inclusion. Here we begin with defining a conceptual framework based on existing education data mapping exercise that have been conducted so far. So we build on what has been done by different institutions that includes the UIS and UNESCO that have worked on this already. This framework defines the main dimensions of analysis and helps identify those emerging themes that has not been already integrated or put together in terms of comparability. The second core design principle is the search and documentation, and our search strategy combines a review of well-known international data sources that already exist, that are already comparable, and we apply a snowball approach to capture additional ones. This means that we let the data to speak to us and see and identify additional sources that can be consistent and be included in this exercise. All the data sets identified are documented using consistent metadata, including several metadata information, coverage years, geographical scope, thematic dimension. All this is to facilitate the comparability of the information. And finally, the additional core design principle is harmonization and assessment, that here we analyze how existing global data sets have been harmonized to extract lessons for future integration. So following the first design principle, we developed an initial, very initial literature-informed conceptual framework. Its purpose is to guide the dimension that will be used to classify the sources, the data, and the indicators that will be included in this TVET data report. This dimension draw on, as I mentioned, on previous international data mapping exercise, specifically in education and skills, and they are designed to ensure their relevance across regions and contexts. The framework, it serves 2 main functions. The first one is to guide the data research, which means that the dimension helps us systematically identify data sets using key terms and a snowballing approach, as I mentioned, to expand the coverage, but also in categorizing the data sets. This categorization means it will allow us to identify the data sets, how they are organized by dimension, allowing us 2 things. On one hand, to spot the gaps in coverage, and in the other, identifying outliers, meaning those data points, data sources that are emerging or are innovative areas. Through this initial exercise, we have identified 3 main groups of dimensions. The first group includes two dimensions, which is that we call it the TVET contextual dimensions. including governance and structure. These ones describing how systems are organized, including institutional setups, program offerings, and qualification pathways. The second group is the core TVET dimensions, which includes finance, quality, access and participation, teaching and training workforce, and relevance, covering aspects such as expenditure, enrollment patterns, and labor market outcomes. And finally, we have the emerging and innovative areas, which the idea is to capture data beyond the traditional frameworks, including non-formal education and micro-credential. We clearly welcome all the feedback and reflection that you can provide on these dimensions here, or even informally through during the coffee breaks or even during lunch. These slides offer an very early look at the mapping of available data sources on the TVET indicators. Although the work that we have conducted so far is still in progress and it's in an early stage, it already reveals clear patterns that connect very much to what we have discussed so far. Most data sources operate at the national level, followed by regional and global data sets, which show what I have explained already, that TVET information remains very fragmented and only partially harmonized internationally. However, there are already efforts of comparable data that we should look at more closely and understand better, and trying to identify the practices that are allowed for those exercises to end up successful. We are capturing data, so far we're capturing data from global sources such as UNESCO, UIS, IDB, also relying on regional systems such as the Asian, Eurostat, and CDFOP. Most data sets focus on upper secondary and post-secondary education, with fewer covering adult and lifelong learning. This is a topic that is being under discussion and in the process to identify better ways to measure them. Many of the data sets that we have identified so far offer long time series spanning up to 2 decades. So this is good, and will enable us for conducting trends analysis. And most sources are publicly available, which is great to start playing with the data and let us to talk. Finally, I would like to mention that core strengths of this TVET data report effort lies in the collaborative foundation. We are in the process to create an advisory group of experts, which will be key to support the works by validating the methodology that we're using, reviewing the data framework, and ensuring the analytical rigor that this work deserves. Collaboration will come also from the partners organization by adding their experience, the data contribution, and the alignment on ongoing global and regional initiatives. And we also aim to work directly with the countries through targeted surveys to not only to collect information about the data that they have, but also getting insight how that data can be useful for policy purposes. So this collaborative approach, it will give the TVET global data report the legitimacy, the credibility, and the practical value that they deserve. And with this, I would like to give the floor to my, well, it's a record video from my colleague Simon Normandou. Is an education policy analyst who will give a brief presentation of one of the OECD study cases that has work on measuring comparative indicators in professional tertiary education. So I don't know if, okay, this is the video. I don't know if we can
to be virtually with you today to talk about the publication I co-authored, Pathways to Profession, Understanding Higher Vocational and Professional Tertiary Education Systems. As you know, tertiary education is traditionally understood as academic disciplines provided in universities. But over time, as tertiary education expanded, it also diversified. today, many countries offer a wide range of professional and vocational options. Programs like bachelor degrees, associate degrees, or 2 years program of higher vocational courses are just examples of that. These prepare students for specific careers, for example, dental hygienists, biomedical technicians, or interior designer. And the institutions providing these programs are just as varied. In Europe, for example, we have University of Applied Sciences. In the United States, we have community colleges. And another example is Korea with junior colleges. And all these contribute to a more diverse and flexible higher education landscape. Given this diversity, it's no surprise that the returns from tertiary education are not the same everywhere. There is an ongoing debate about the best way to prepare people for their careers. Some argue that general education gives young people a broad foundation. Knowledge and skills they can apply in different jobs, helping them adapt to a rapidly changing labor market. Others say that professionally oriented programs make it easier to move straight into work, and that early, smooth entry into the labor market can have lasting effects on career prospects. There's no simple answer to that, but one thing is clear is that we need reliable data to understand what's happening and to monitor professional programs as part of the broader tertiary education system. This would allow countries to compare and learn from one another's experience. And that's where the project Pathways to Profession comes in. Co-funded by the European Commission, it was published in 2022 and it had 3 main objectives. First, to inform policy development in higher vocational education and training, drawing on international experience. Second, to improve data coverage of higher VET in existing and future surveys. And third, to stimulate dialogue towards a shared international definition and classification of academic and professional education at the tertiary level. The work took place in several fronts. First, we had desk-based research, reviewing evidence from sources like the OECD Survey of Adult Skills, Education at a Glance, and the Labor Force Surveys. Second, we also had a dialogue with countries through the ad hoc working group on professional tertiary education. This group brought together 27 countries and 6 international organizations. And third, we had a data collection, where part A was looking at how we might define program orientation in a consistent international way. And part B gathered examples of policies and practices in professional tertiary education. In total, 37 countries took part in the survey, giving us a rich set of comparative insights. So in summary, Pathways to Professions is an important step forward. It helps us understand the growing field of professional tertiary education, and we are delighted to see that following the recommendation from our report, the work is progressing on an agreed international definition of academic and professional orientation at the tertiary level. This work is taking place within the scope of the upcoming ISCIT revision. If you want to know more, please read our report, which can be downloaded free of charge, and do not hesitate to reach out if you have any further questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So now I'm going to give the floor back to Gesa. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
So thank you. Thank you, Iván, for that comprehensive overview of the TVET Global Data Report. And you've clearly outlined the ambitious vision behind this initiative. Now our panel discussion will explore 3 key questions. And I'd like to invite the panelists on, please join me on the panel. That is Iza Mohamedou and Pedro Moreno da Fonseca, and online María Fernanda Prada. Does it work? Yes. Iza Mohamedou, head of the OECD Center for Skills, bringing over 25 years of international experience in skills policy development. Welcome to the panel. Pedro Moreno da Fonseca, technical specialist at the International Labour Organization. Welcome to the panel. And María Fernanda Prada. Are you with us, María? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello,
can you hear
great
me?
to have you here. Yes, we can hear you. María Fernanda Prada is a senior education specialist at the Inter-American Development Bank, currently managing education portfolios in Trinidad and Tobago and Suriname. Welcome to you all. And we discuss 3 key questions on this challenging topic, global data report. The first question is, why is such a global effort needed now? The second is, what challenges must we overcome in building this evidence base? And the third is, what features should the report include to make it truly useful for countries and organizations? So, through our conversation, you, the audience, will see prompt questions again and QR codes on the screen, and you are warmly invited to participate by scanning them and sharing your views. Those joining online can also contribute through the same interactive polls. We have about 20 minutes for our discussion, so let's get started. My first question I'd like to ask Iza. Why a global data report now? In your perspective, why it is needed now?
So I think we've heard this morning quite a lot about the necessity of looking at the VET also in terms of its key role when it comes to employability and productivity. I think it's really at the core of the discussions nowadays, and it has been in the past, but it's really getting a lot. I think what's important is also that we are a little bit navigating blindly for some years, and that's something that we need to address. So if you look at, for instance, the fact that about 40% of OECD learners have an upper secondary VET qualification, but when you look outside of that, we don't really have that kind of information from a lot of the other countries. So that really has an impact. And it's not just about, as you've heard as well in the intervention of Iván and Simon, it's not just about data, it's also about the issue of terminology, of qualifications, of classifications as well. So it really is something that we need to address. So for instance, if you look at the example of nurses or teachers, in some countries it's looked at academic, in others it's looked at professional. It really is something that doesn't facilitate any kind of comparability. So that's, I think, quite important. And so that's the work we've done in the past. In 2022, as we mentioned, it was quite difficult, but we have tried to propose already some indicators, some classifications that we can build on. And I think that's important that, as we try to say throughout this morning, we're not doing this in vacuum. We're not starting from scratch. We're really building on the efforts of all of the agencies and the different countries as well, so that the intention is not only to try to put together what exists, but also to advance knowledge. And I think that's really important. We owe it to the VET students. We really owe it to them in terms of recognition of what they contribute to the economy and society. And we owe it to the policymakers so that they also know much better what we can do and how we should be designing some of these policies as well. So I think that's really why for us it's really important, beyond the fact that we love data at the OECD, but it's really also purposeful as well. So I think that's really something. And so the idea is really that if we can identify blind spots, if we can identify as well new types of indicators so that we really advance. So it's not about putting out what exists, but also really advancing knowledge as well.
So thank you so much, Iza. That was very insightful in a way also for us. So Pedro, I'd like to ask you, and also María later on, from your organization's perspective, what could stronger international VET data enable you to do that is not currently possible with existing information?
So thank you very much for this. So I would like to start by clarifying that unlike what the initial slide said, I do not work for the International Daniel Ramirez organization, although I'm sure he's a good person.
Okay, thank you.
But for the ILO. But I think there's about three things that can be done. I think that one is really having a better characterization of both supply and demand side in terms of the labor market. And when I talk about demand, I also include not only this, as Moreno was saying at the beginning, not only what is relevant for competitiveness, but also what is relevant for society, also including social demand and taking into account the variety of contexts which exist, and especially the reality of low and middle income countries, which also have less available data to deal with and to offer, so need to make a greater effort in terms of building capacity to gather this data. And I think it will allow us to characterize things which, for example, in high-income countries are quite easy, knowing what's the number of courses, what's the number of learners, what are the outputs of TVET, and are not so easy, for example, in the reality of African or South Asia countries. So we've done, for example, work also in the care and health occupations area in cooperation with the OECD, actually, and we tried to map out supply, and it wasn't that easy to do, actually. So this was a difficult exercise to do in Southeast Asia and in Africa. On the other hand, also the demand side, where the gap is particularly high, so many countries really do not have yet the capacity to regularly produce information on demand, so it's hard to make the analysis for policy that are relevant. I think that also other two areas which will be important to enhance and that probably can be addressed by this is really knowing impacts, not only short-term impacts, but what is known about long-term impacts of education and training, because this is fundamental really to have good planning and good policy implementation. And on the other hand, what was mentioned by Iván, which is data on costing. As was mentioned by Mrs. Hanken at the beginning, it's not pretty, but it's how you make policy. You need to know how much it costs for whom, and how much it costs for what. And then you can make good policy.
Okay, thank you very much, Pedro. María, Fernanda, from your perspective, what would you like to comment, to contribute, please?
Thank you so much. I think that having like robust data, it's important. I agree with everything that Pablo and Liza had said. I think that there are like three main things that are important in general with the data. It's like to diagnose the challenges with precision, identifying what are the main challenges and particularly who is being left out at which educational level, in which territories, and particularly in TVET, identifying the gaps that persist. Second, trying to prioritize policies for maximum social return. We know that with stronger data, it makes us available and possible to prioritize intervention, particularly under fiscal constraints. And third, to monitor the progress of policies, programs, and interventions that support rigorous evaluation. We know that having consistent metrics across countries help us identify which TVET programs and pathways deliver results, and more importantly, to compare across countries. With stronger international data, we could facilitate like global collaboration, learn from diverse contexts, and accelerate the adoptions of best practices. And very, very, very specifically, I can tell you that right now, just having data on key indicators in TVET, such as access, coverage, efficiency, and learning quality in different TVET pathways is a real challenge. So having that type of information will be really valuable. And also the specific disaggregation can help us to tackle something that is very important, particularly in a region like Latin America, which is it has like so much inequality and is to deeper our equity analysis, every systematic disaggregation of the participation on outcomes by gender, socioeconomic status, rural and urban locations, help us to identify the access, for example, in completion or labor market insertion. And finally, something that has been mentioned here already in terms of the demand and supply, having better data will help us to link and strengthen the link of education and labor markets to analyze really, for example, returns to different pathways in education, different type of programs, and of course, make better policy decisions.
Thank you so much. Before we move on to the next question, I'd like to give the floor to you, to the audience. Let's hear from you. Please scan the QR code now appearing on screen. Or if you are online, use the poll link for the next Menti questionnaire. So the question is, what do you see as the main challenges in developing a global evidence base on that data? Now, you have 1 minute to type in your thoughts in your mobile. So funding, reporting, definitions, comparability. So I can see a lot of interesting responses coming in. In terms of the main challenges. Let's keep this in mind as we move on to our next round, addressing the challenges again. And so my question to Elisa again is, what are, in your perspective, what are the main challenges you foresee in developing a global evidence base on VET, whether in terms of definitions, data availability, or institutional collaboration?
So I think we're absolutely clear about the complexity and that this report creates. We're really very clear that it's going to be a difficult endeavor, and it's really interesting to see the number of words that are coming up in terms of challenges. So I think that's interesting. I think the first one is we have started the work. Even though we're launching today, you have seen we've started some of the work. So let's start with the positive. I think, we're launching, so we have to be positive. There is some data out there. So we've started collecting the data. We've already collected about 12 international data sets, about 26 regional ones, and about 44 national data sets. So there is quite a lot of data out there that we can build on. So that's positive. I think the other positive part is also the strong institutional investment that you see here around this, it's not a table, but in the room. It's really important. We can see that there's engagement from everyone. Now, I think there, and clearly coming out actually from the words that are popping up, two major challenges for us. One is really the terminology and definitions. And so I'll give you an example. If you think about work-based learning, in some countries, if the program is about 90% of it, then it's considered work-based learning, just as much as, sort of when it's in a program, 20% in another country. So makes really comparability quite different, and equivalence as well very difficult in that sense. So I think when we look into formal VET, particularly when it's really about the structured learning resulting in a certification. There are differences when it comes to the target age group. We have differences when it comes to the institutional arrangements. We have differences as well that about the educational levels. All of that makes comparability very difficult. So I think it's really about these terminology. And then there's also the scope of VET. So whether we're looking at formal VET is one thing, but the moment we expand a little bit and we're looking into informal learning, when we're looking into also workplace training, when we're looking into micro-credentials, that really expands it and makes it very difficult. So I think what we need and where we will be focusing, and you've seen we're trying to put a very transparent structure, we're trying to put as well bringing in experts, we're trying to, it engages the credibility of all of the institutions here and the German government and the other countries that will join as well. So it's really important for us that we make it right and we do it right. So we need those clear conceptual frameworks. We need some kind of consensus. We won't be able to cover everything, but we will need, and we need also, what we want is really to try to have a commitment to improve knowledge around this. And so I think that's really going to be important. And we'll be building on what UNESCO is doing, what ETS is doing, and also what the German government is doing, because we are building on the national report, which is really pioneering as well, VET data. So it's something that, you know, we have a good example as well to build on.
Thank you so much. Pedro, would you like to add something very shortly, very briefly, because of the running time?
I mean, there is some data available, but I mean, there isn't much in many countries, right? So speaking to the ILO product, let's put it like this, which by excellence, which is labor force survey, I mean, it's not implemented regularly in many countries. There are a lot of difficulties on this level, so the implementation can be irregular, which means we cannot really compute very key indicators, and we cannot have visibility on gaps or mismatches as we would have liked. And then there is the data which is even patchier, you know, like costing data or evaluation data, which limits the possibility of then interacting or enabling interaction between the public and the private sector. So this conversation to happen needs an improvement on this. Just very quickly, of course, all these issues in terms of the shared frameworks, the shared standards, all of that we need to reference everything to the same so that we can compare it. But on this level, there is hope as well, because there is successful work that is being implemented, for example, between the ILO and the OECD on the development of a global skills taxonomy under the umbrella of the G20. And this is something that is being done in cooperation with the government of India, support of the German government, and also is also some promising work that not only puts in, that also puts together this idea of global cooperation and then global to national cooperation, which I think will also be very important.
So thank you, Pedro. And María, Fernanda, you're still there, that is great. And with your experience working across Latin America and the Caribbean, this must be particularly relevant for you. Which kind of challenges can you determine to compare and different data collection and to make it more relevant in diverse contexts?
Thank you so much. I agree with what has been said in terms of definition and terminology. It's like really, we have a variety of modalities of TVET offerings. For example, within like secondary education, we have modalities such as Brazil, that is a complete track for 2 years specific, and then we have the career and technical education in the US, that it's only a few electives that not necessarily are interconnected, and all of them are called TVET in secondary. But I think that the most important part and challenge here, it's data availability. At the IDB, we work a lot with household surveys, and household surveys have a lot of information about education, the type of education, the careers, the programs, So as Elisa was saying, it's good that data is out there, that we have some data to work with. And last year we were looking at some like creating indicators such as, for example, graduation rates in higher education, dividing between TVET and other different pathways. What we found is like out of like 18 countries that we looked, 13 of them provided enough data to separate the graduation rates between higher education and other forms of tertiary education. However, of course, if we want to go like more granular in terms of like to classify the type of TVET programs at the tertiary level, only 5 out of the 18 countries had enough information. Another source of information that we use, it's administrative records. And again, we collected information with the statistical unit for 15 countries. And what we saw, it's like to map the availability, the structure, and update the frequency of the educational records. And what we saw is like out of 15 countries that we interview, 11 of them report individual data on TVET students. So we have the data. Of course, it's limited because, for example, attendance and dropouts is not necessarily reported by all the countries. Only 4 out of the 15 reported having this type of data. So definitely challenges are in terms of like definition, having clear definitions that allowed comparability and also to differentiate between different types of TVET, like TVET modalities within, for example, formal education in secondary or in tertiary education. And of course, there's a lot of work to be done to support the ministries of education in reporting, the data organizations in having and building common standards. But there's a lot of good positive side, which is like data is available, and also a lot of room for coordination, for support, and continues working in this very important endeavor.
So thank you so much, and unfortunately we are running out of the time, so we have to come to the end of this session. I think we have several possibilities to discuss these questions during the whole conference. So thank you very much to my panelists, to Iza Mohamedou, to Pedro, and to María, Fernando. And I'd like now to close the session. And now it's time for lunch. And before you go to the lunch, we have to repeat the photo again. Because not everyone was inside the picture. We have to make it again as a group. And I think, Katharina, we will do this at the ground floor beside the restaurant. So before you go to the restaurant, please find yourself again all together to repeat the photo again so that we have a whole group picture again. So thank you very much and enjoy your lunchtime. María.